Uhuru. Uhuru. Can I get thank you, some response? Thank you. Uhuru, I am not alone here. And Uhuru, to everybody viewing us online, we do have a huge online audience with us every Sunday. So Uhuru, to all of our comrades online. My name is Akila Anai, and I'm a member of the International People's Democratic Uhuru Movement. And you are now tuned into our weekly Resistance Sunday rallies. And I want to first thank everyone for joining us tonight to conclude a week of much excitement for the African community of Southside St. Pete. We had a lot going on this week, and we're going to be talking about it today. We're going to be summing up these events. And before we begin, though, I need everybody to stand up so we can recite the African pledge located on the back of your program. Uhuru. I pledge allegiance to my African people. I pledge to develop my mind and body to the greatest extent possible. I will learn all that I can in order to give my best to my people and our struggle for liberation through revolution. I will keep myself physically fit, building a strong body free from drugs and other substances which weaken me and make me less capable of defending myself, my family, and my African brothers and sisters. I will unselfishly share my knowledge and understanding with others in order to bring about change more quickly. I will discipline myself to direct my energies thoughtfully and constructively rather than wasting time in idle hatred. I will train myself never to hurt or allow others to harm my African brothers and sisters, for I recognize that we need every African man, woman, and child to be physically, mentally, and psychologically strong. These principles I pledge to practice daily and to teach them to others in order to unite my people in the struggle for freedom and independence. Uhuru. Uhuru. So, like I was saying in the beginning, this concludes a week of much activity that the African community in St. Pete has seen, and it is around Tyrone Lewis, who was murdered 20 years ago by the St. Petersburg Police Department, specifically officers James Knight and Sandra Minor. And that murder of Tyrone Lewis incited the rebellions of 1996, where two rebellions sparked from the African community, one where the police actually attacked this Uhuru House right here and the leaders of the Uhuru movement, where they threw all the tear gas they had in the city. They tried to set the building, they tried to set cars on fire, but the community fought back. And 20 years later, we see why Tyrone Lewis is still very relevant. And if that's not obvious in the events that we just had today, I mean, just throughout this week, then, I don't know how it can be more clear. But the events started, well, I guess we should say on October 24th of this year, we celebrated the 20-year anniversary of the murder of Tyrone Lewis. And we remembered Tyrone Lewis with a vigil where his son, Tyrone Lewis Jr., was down here. He spoke, and we put up the sign, Tyrone Lewis Avenue, renaming 16th Street and what was 18th Avenue, Tyrone Lewis Avenue. We did that on October 24th, which was the 20th anniversary of his murder. And the sign had been up all the way until Tuesday of this week. And there was a threat that came from the police union to the mayor demanding that the sign be taken down. And so we had started just last Sunday a 24-hour vigil where some of our comrades actually chained themselves to the sign, and people in the community came out and gathered around that sign to defend the sign, protect the sign, because the city had said that they were going to be out there Monday with the police to take down that sign. So we were out there starting on Sunday, 8 p.m., out there for 24 hours. And we didn't leave until Monday at 8 p.m. Now, again, all of this started because the police union of St. Pete sent a demand to the mayor. And for a little bit of history, the police union has always been anti-African, and this community has always been anti-African. The police union is not for African people. And the letter came to the office of Mayor Kreisman saying that the Tyrone Lewis sign had to go because it was a slap in the face to all law enforcement. It was an illegal sign that was erected without permission from the city, and that the sign memorialized a criminal. And you know, we had to respond. We had a press conference after, you know, this came out, and to say that we were going to defend the sign by any means necessary, and that's exactly what we did on that 24-hour vigil. But we say to this letter that, you know, it is a slap in the face, because they have to be reminded of a murder they committed. It is a slap in the face every single day that they have to be reminded that they committed a crime, that they murdered Tyrone Lewis. And it is a slap in the face to have to be reminded of the time they got their asses kicked by the poor working class African people on the south side of St. Pete in 1996 and Uhuru. So it is a slap in the face. To have to constantly be reminded of that, my tail would be between my legs too. And so also to that is the African community has no respect for the police. And this is something that dates back to, you know, 600 years when African people were stolen, because the police came into existence as a consequence of Europe being poor and living under feudalism. Half of their population killed off by a plague, famine. They couldn't grow anything. You know, it was dry, barren, rock, freezing cold. They had nothing. And they invaded and colonized Africa, the Americas, and various places around the world, committing genocide against the indigenous peoples and creating a parasitic economic and social system with the enslavement of African people. So now Europe now owns the majority of the world's wealth. America owns the majority of the world's wealth. And the police comes into existence to maintain this wealth, to maintain white power, and this parasitic relationship that it has with the oppressed people. The police is a violent, coercive arm of the state, and it becomes absolutely necessary to make sure that the people who have and can keep what they have at the expense of who they've got it from, at the expense of the oppressed, at the expense of African people, at the expense of people in the Middle East where they bomb every single day to loot the resources, at the expense of the indigenous people who lost their land. So the people who have can maintain what they have. That's why the police are necessary in our communities. So the police function in our communities as a colonial, military, occupying force, like the ones you see in Afghanistan. So the same ones that US deploys over to different countries to take their resources and to kill their people, it's the same people in the African community terrorizing and killing our people when they killed Tyrone Lewis and when they're killing us today. It's the same occupying force. So this community says we have no respect for no law enforcement, because that's what they represent. That's what they do. So who cares about a damn slap in the face? The slap in the face is the least of your worries that you have from the African community. Uhuru. And so they demanded that we ask permission. And we said, hell no. Hell no, asking permission. Hell no to asking this city for permission for something that African community can decide for ourselves. We decided on a street sign to memorialize Tyrone Lewis. We did the labor work in putting that sign in the ground. This community defended it, stood up, resisted, and was willing to resist against the police when they were threatened to be there and they never came. When they threatened to be there, this community was the one who was defending it. We did that. So we don't need permission to be a self-governing people. We don't need permission to be able to determine how we will memorialize our martyrs, the people that they have killed. We don't need permission from the city, the people in which killed Tyrone Lewis, and they killed Tyrone Lewis twice, when they shot him down in the street and when they slandered his name in the media and criminalized him and said that he deserved his own death. And it is a right to free speech, and that we demand must not be impeded on. We have the right to free speech, because the reality is, if we needed permission to put that sign up, then every memorial ever erected on the side of the streets in St. Pete has to go. They have to go. The police in the city need to be around every memorial that's placed around St. Pete, that's in the white community, that's on the side of the interstate. They got to snatch all those down. If it means that memorials can't go up, and ours have to be torn down, then they need to tear every single memorial down too. But that's not the case. The sign is illegal because the police murdered Tyrone Lewis, and they were hoping we'd forgotten about it. They were hoping that we weren't fighting for him still. They are trying to keep it quiet. They tried to sweep it under the rug 20 years ago, and they're trying to do it again today. It's only illegal because Tyrone Lewis's name is on that sign. Because it's not illegal when they put up street signs with the police officer's name on them, with murderers' names on them. It's not illegal when they do that. And the African community can't say anything about that. They didn't ask the African community whether or not we approved of the name of police on the names of street signs. They didn't ask the African community for that. And the reality is this: They don't ask permission to terrorize our community. They didn't ask permission for the African community to murder Tyrone Lewis. They didn't ask permission when they destroyed half of the African community with that eyesore baseball Tropicana Field Stadium, and they destroyed the African economy that was here, that with all the black businesses, they destroyed that. They didn't ask permission from the African community. No, they kicked us out of the community. They didn't ask us permission. The city didn't ask permission when they hung that hideous anti-African mural on the steps of City Hall that the chairman had to tear down, amongst others, and had to spend time in prison for. They didn't ask permission. In fact, the African community fought for that mural to be taken down. We fought for it in the legal way. We fought with petitions. And at the end of the day, we had to tear it down ourselves because they wouldn't take the mural down. But they didn't ask permission from the African community to put that mural up. They didn't ask permission from the African community to tear our city apart. They don't ask permission now when they shove all these white people in here and they raise up these rents and kick us out of our own community. They're not asking us now, and they're not asking when they murdered Tyrone Lewis. They didn't ask us when they murdered Dominique, Lanaya, Ashanti. They didn't ask the community for that. So we don't need to ask permission to memorialize Tyrone Lewis. We don't need to ask permission to put a sign up in Tyrone Lewis's memory. Damn your permission. So after this 24-hour vigil that was held on Sunday up until Monday evening, the city came out at 10 in the morning like thieves do when there's nobody else around. They waited until the community was gone like cowards, and they took the sign. And they didn't just take the sign, but they didn't cut it down, they didn't dig it out, they didn't do anything like that. They burned it. They burned it at the base and took the majority of the sign down, but left this jagged piece of metal sticking out of the ground so that any child running around could hurt themselves, that anybody could hurt themselves, trip themselves, or anything, and land on that. They could have been seriously injured. That's what they left in our community. But on Friday night, this community came out and we celebrated the erection of the new Tyrone Lewis Avenue sign. So I just want to give a round of applause, because that was an amazing event. I see a lot of faces in here who were with us that night, and let me tell you that the support of the community is so overwhelming. We have had the support. We were out there at the 24-hour vigil. People were coming up. People wanted to know what we were talking about. People wanted flyers. We're signing all the contact information that they could and just staying out there protecting us while the police were riding by, like coming real close to the curb, trying to intimidate our comrades who were chained to the sign. They came out during a press conference and they just were throwing their fists out. Some of them were hanging out their cars and chanting with us. And on that night, when we had the music out there and we had the chairman Omali Ashitelo, who spoke and delivered this dynamic presentation, which just got people to just stop and listen to what was being said. And we had amazing cultural performances out there, some singing, some poetry. We had our Who Foods and Pies out there. It was an amazing night. And Chairman Omali Ashitelo and Deanne Lewis, the older sister of Tyrone Lewis, they unveiled the sign to the community, and it was just an amazing event. And the community, the outpour of the community of support that we had, which is extremely overwhelming. And it just speaks to, again, how relevant Tyrone Lewis is to us today, that the community still remembers Tyrone Lewis, still remembers the events of the rebellions of 1996. And every time we say something about Tyrone Lewis in this community, you know, everybody is just, yeah, I remember that, it was wrong, all this kind of stuff, and just the support that we get and the support that we still have today. And for even those who weren't around, who can identify with Tyrone Lewis because they constantly see their brothers and sisters murdered in these streets, just like on March 31st, earlier this year, when they murdered Dominique, Lanaya, and Ashanti, the Pinellas County Sheriff's Department corralled them into a pond and then watched them drown. And, you know, this is the reality that African people are confronted with every single day. And so Tyrone Lewis is close to everybody. Even if we weren't born yet to have experienced it, we still live it every single day because our people are taken away from us. And we see it everywhere we are, not just in the US, but all around the world. But that night, again, was just an amazing night. And, you know, we gave Deanne Lewis an award. She was given an appreciation award, the Big Sister of Southside St. Pete, for, you know, everything that she's gone through, but also her unending fight. And, even though she couldn't join us today, she said that she wanted to make a statement at this rally to first appreciate everybody who has, just joined this fight for Tyrone Lewis and, for putting that sign up, and to the whole community that just, stands by and defends it every single day. So I'm going to bring up my comrade, LaTanya Givens, to read that statement for us really quick. Uhuru. Uhuru. Okay, so this is from Tyrone Lewis, and it reads, Tyrone Lewis' sign is not just Tyron's. It's also Trayvon Martin's sign. It's Mike Brown's sign. It's Sandra Bland's sign. It's the sign for any Black person that has been killed by any police. It's all of their signs, and it's our sign. I ask that the community and the Uhuru movement continue to protect this sign. It will mean a lot to me and my family, and I thank you. And, the movement knows that Deanne is a few words. She doesn't like to say a lot, but over the course of these past few weeks, she has just, really spoken to, what has happened to her brother, and also just really appreciating the support that she's getting from the community and this movement. So we really want to appreciate Deanne Lewis for her fight and sticking with us for 20 years afterwards, and fighting for all African people murdered by the police, because we understand that Tyrone Lewis isn't an isolated case. Again, this happens to us every single day. And Deanne Lewis recognizes that, and she fights for all African people. So Uhuru. Uhuru. And, to defend the sign as the African community is to defend our right, one, for free speech, and it's to defend our right to be a self-determined, self-governing people. And because this sign represents resistance. It represents the resistance that we had in 1996 when we kicked the asses of 300 police officers, and it represents the resistance of the African community today. We're not just, laying down on our bellies anymore and taking the billy club anymore, but we're fighting back every single day, and that's what is called for us to do. We have to fight back, and we have to defend the sign, because as we witness, Mayor Kreisman, who is, now an enemy to the African community, who sided with the police union, who sent the city in, who sent the police in. The last thing, you are definitely an enemy when you are sending more police officers into our community, who sent the police in to take that sign down. And, even though it was the African vote that got him his seat as mayor anyway. But we recognize who Kreisman is as a puppet. The police union said that the Uhuru movement is trying to bully Kreisman. Well, it looks to me that the police union did a great job in bullying Kreisman to lay down on their bellies for him and, get him to work their agenda. So, but the African community can't expect Mayor Kreisman to protect it. You can't go to Kreisman and ask him to please protect our sign. And we can't go to the police union and beg them to leave our sign alone. We, as the African community, have to fight for our sign. We have to defend our sign and not ask that anybody else do it for us, because our freedom is not going to be given by anybody else. Nobody else can give us our freedom. African people have to fight for it every single day. We have been fighting for it, and we can never stop fighting. So there are a couple of different ways that you can defend the sign. And if you didn't pick up a flyer at the front with Mayor Rick Kreisman's ugly face on it, you can also pick one up here at the table. But, we're calling on people to conduct surveillance, and, just if at some point in time you have a little bit of time on your hands, just stand out, just stand guard by the sign, just make sure that nothing's happening to it. And if you sit in that Salem's or what have you, if you just want to participate in defending the sign, conduct some surveillance around it, and get tips. If you see the police riding around it a couple of times a day, some city workers stopping by, scoping out the area, something like that, report that to the movement. So that we can mobilize, because they're going to try to do anything that they can, maybe try to do it again, a little sneak attack. We wake up in the morning and it's not there anymore. So conduct whatever surveillance you can. And we're also asking you to call the mayor, bug the hell out of the mayor. Call him. On that sign, it has his number. Repeatedly call him and tell him to leave the sign alone. Leave the sign alone. The African community is willing to defend it by any means necessary, but Mayor Rick Kreisman, you better leave that damn sign alone. And we want to call him. We want to flood his streams. We want to get his receptionist, his assistant, all flustered. Like, we want all of them to feel it. We want the pressure on their asses. We want them to know that we're not playing about the sign. Do not touch the sign. So again, clog their phone, call that number. It's on your program, but it's also on the flyer at the table and also at the greeter table. You can also place memorial items on the sign. You know, make this an eye catcher. Anybody who rides past it looks up at the sign and recognize, oh, that's my sign. My sign's right there. This is Tyrone Lewis Avenue. Because Tyrone Lewis Avenue, we need to stop saying 18th Ave anymore. It's Tyrone Lewis Avenue. It's always going to be Tyrone Lewis Avenue. And the way to, you know, get that on people's minds is if people are seeing the sign. And there are a couple of teddy bears up there, some flowers, but, you know, continuously put your memorial items on the sign. And also, one of the most important things is to join InPDUM. Join the International People's Democratic Uhuru Movement. Join in this fight to defend this sign, to be, when you call to action, when we have to do press conferences, when we have to do demonstrations, you know, we have to do outreach in the community. You have to become a member. You have to fight for this sign, and the way you do that is to become a part of an organization that has always been fighting for the interests of the poor and working class and African people. So, but those are a couple of different ways that, you know, you can defend the sign. And also, if anybody has like any, you know, recommendations or questions as how you can do that, we'll talk about it a little bit later. All right, so I would like to bring Tanya back up again, please. Uhuru, thank you. Before we start, did anybody have any questions or anything they wanted to say before we continue with our program? Anything to say about what we've talked about so far, the sum up? Shannon.
I think it's Uhuru, really important, this discussion about the sign, because the sign is really a symbol. That's the fight that they're engaged in. It's a symbol. That's the thing that indeed makes it a feature of free speech. That's the real problem for the government. They say it's an illegal sign, but what makes the sign illegal? And that's a real question. I mean, even if one wanted to respect the law, their law, the white colonial law, then what is it according to their law that makes the sign illegal? It might be illegal if we went to them to get a sign, and if they didn't do it, we disregarded them and put up their sign, but this is not their sign. We didn't even ask them to recognize the sign. We didn't go to them and say, please recognize this. Henceforth is Tyrone Lewis Avenue. We didn't go to them at all for anything. So what makes it illegal? They say, well, we have a process for naming streets. Okay, use your process when you want to name a street, but we are going to you for that. We putting up the sign ourselves. So this is not your sign, this is our sign. And I think it's really important to remember that. When they talk about this issue of legality, yes, you do have a process. When somebody wants the city to recognize a changed street, you have a process to making that happen. We're not asking the city to recognize this as a changed street. We're doing it ourselves. This is what we named the street. So it's not like we somehow misuse your process. We disregarded what you were doing and did something ourselves. I think it's really important to recognize that when they talk about illegality, because that's usually what they mean. When they say the sign is illegal, they mean you didn't use the proper process for naming a street sign. Well, we don't care about your proper process for naming a street sign. This is what we have named the sign, notwithstanding what kind of setup that you have, what your policies are around that. That's one thing I think is really important. And this question of free speech is not a small thing. I'm raising this question of free speech because they like to pretend that they believe in constitutions and they believe in democracy and things like that. That's, of course, we know just how much they believe in it. All you got to do is look at the police in our communities and the kinds of things that happen to us. It clearly indicate that they do not. But they pretend that they believe in Constitution. They pretend they believe in things like the freedom of speech. And this is the constitutional guarantee. You have the right to free speech, freedom of expression. And that's why they would allow those memorials to be up in various places, because it's a form of freedom of expression. Somebody was killed here. So they don't care about that. What they care about is this symbol that we have put there on Tyrone Lewis Avenue and 16th Street. And why do they care about that? They care about it in the first place because the government doesn't want to be reminded of its acts of murder and brutality in our community. They want to be able to define who Tyrone Lewis was, just as they do anytime they murder somebody from our community. That's when they kill somebody one day and the next morning in the newspaper, there's an article about their criminal record. Like when they murdered the 3 girls on March 31st. They're here juveniles, and traditionally they say you shouldn't even release the records of juveniles, and then you've got mug shots and things like that. The 2 15-year-old and 1 16-year-old girl, because they want to murder us, and then they want to define us as these horrible human beings. And so now what has happened is when we put that sign up, we define who the horrible human being was, not Tyrone Lewis, but the murderers. And so that's a real problem for them, for us to be able to, after they've justified murdering this guy by calling him a criminal, then we put the sign up from the African community that designates him as something else, and that infers that the real criminals, the real murderers, are the person who killed him. They have a real problem with that. And listen, to understand this, you have to know that lynchers have come to the homes of African people and murdered them. And they have forced their parents and grandparents. Emmett Till, when he was killed, his grandparent was forced to say to the news media that the child was no good anyway. This is the kind of thing that they do in order to justify their murder. And that's why you have even African people whose children have been murdered find ourselves on the defensive. And you always hear, well, he was just turning his life around. He was going to school, he was getting good grades and all this kind of stuff. Why you mean to say that you got to go to school and get good grades not to get killed by the police, not to be murdered by the state? That's nonsense. But that's the defensive position that they put us in. And so they want to control how the person who they murder is understood, and they want to control how they are understood. And they want to be able to walk around calling themselves heroes. These are the heroes in the city, these thugs in uniform. So that's important. And another thing that makes the sign important is just related to that, though, is that what happens to us, we can begin to believe that we are worthless ourselves. If somebody can come to your community and just regularly gun you down, kill you, and then treat it just like dead meat, you're just a piece of dead meat that they murdered, and there's no response, there's no meaningful response from the community, we begin to think less of ourselves as human beings, that this is normal, this is the way it's supposed to function. And so what we are saying is, no, this is not the way it's supposed to function. And so we will hold them up if nobody else does. That's why that gym was named for Tyrone Lewis. That's why a gym that doesn't even make any money and costs us a lot of money has been there for 20 years since the murder of Tyrone Lewis. We named it that. So that the city wants to erase it, wants to just make it another dead nigger, but it ain't. And people have forgotten the names of so many people who were murdered by the police. Who remembers big man Willie Daniels, who they killed right at the same place? Who remembers all the others that they have killed? And they have nobody, only their families remember them. And so, but now what has happened is that, as Deanne Lewis has said in her letter, that this sign represents everybody who they've killed, etc. So it's a symbol that is very difficult for them to deal with. So it's also, again, a statement of how we recognize our own value as human beings. If you are not going to kill the policeman who killed Tyrone Lewis, which would be justice. I mean, you hear black people say, all I want is justice. Well, if you really want justice, then the James Knight's mama should be going through the same things that Tyrone Lewis' mama is going through. If you want justice, So if you're not going to get justice, if you're not going to kill the cop who did it, the minimum that can happen is put up a damn sign in his name. That's the minimum that can happen. So I just think that they have a real problem having to deal with a community that recognizes that you murdered him, and that we are going to never forget that you murdered him, and we're not going to let you forget that he was murdered, and we're not going to let you forget that we know who the hell you are. You are not this hero that you claim yourself to be, but you're murderers, and you killed 18-year-old Tyrone Lewis. So I think that's part of what makes it significant. And just in terms of our own sense of self-dignity as a community, as a people, you have to do something. You have to do something when they kill your children. You have to do something when they kill your babies. You have to do something when they gun you down in the streets. You have to do something. You have to respond some. It's not even about what the white people think. It's not even about what the government, it's what we think of ourselves. And if we don't respond to it, then we get accustomed to the kind of abnegation, we get accustomed to the definitions that's been imposed on us from the outside. So that's another reason it's important. But ultimately, the real question that we're dealing with is the right, our right as a people to define our own reality. Our right as a people to be self-governing, to be in charge of our own affairs. Why is it that we have to ask the white man for a damn thing? You've already given us more than what we want. You gave us more than what every heartache that we've got has come as a consequence of our relationship to white power. Everyone, every heartache, every broken dream, every bad feeling that we have, every nightmare that we experience comes as a consequence of our relationship to white power. If you got a toothache, white people did it. If you got a headache, it comes from white power. Everything, every horrible thing that we experience. So we don't want that from you. What we want is payback. We want everything you've stolen from us because we don't plan to start new. We've already created enough. We've already built enough. Don't tell me to get a job. You get a damn job and pay me what you have not paid me up to now. You understand? And of course, it makes sense. It makes sense for white people and white power to tell you to get a job. That makes a hell of a lot of sense. If they ain't paid you for the damn work you've already done, they tell you to get a job. You ought to be running like hell away from that. I mean, here's somebody who never paid you for what you've done. You worked for free for a few hundred years and they're going to tell you get a job. So it seems to me there's something wrong with that formula. We are interested in being self-governing, self-determining. And that's something that you won't win overnight. It's a long struggle that you're involved in to do that. That's why people who just coming into political life, after what they've seen in Ferguson with young people being gunned down, who are now becoming conscious, you got to recognize that we in the African People's Socialist Party, we've been dealing with this struggle for more than 40 years. And that when we talk about that sign, one thing that makes it significant is that sign, that brother was killed 20 years ago, and we're still fighting that same battle. That's who we are, because it won't be won overnight. But this is the first time we took the initiative and put up a street sign to name form. That's an act of self-determination. That's an act of small step in the direction of self-government. And that's really important for us. Did you notice that when we were out there putting up that sign, was that Friday night? Did you notice that you didn't see a single cop out there? The police got off the streets because they can't handle the black power in the full glare of light, when people can see what it is that they're doing, when the community is out. They can't handle that. And so they just disappear. They conceded to us. They conceded to us the right to put that sign up and not do anything, and have a celebration, have a ceremony on the public sidewalk. They conceded that to us. Otherwise, they would have to face the risk of fighting us in the streets and what have you, which meant they would face the risk of fighting the African community in the streets, and they didn't want that. That's a statement of power that we're looking at. Another statement of the same power is that the police and the government have decided, or seem to have decided, that they didn't want the police to make the move. They want to use what they call a third party. They want to make you have to fight workers. So they send a city worker out there to remove it, as opposed to sending the police out there. So the worker now takes the role of the police to come move the thing, and that removes the police from the obvious kind of equation, so that you can't say that the state proper did this. There were some workers who came out and I'm just doing my job, taking it down kind of thing. So another thing that's really important about everything that we're doing is it's happening within the context of a fast changing world, a fast changing world. There are a lot of Africans right now upset, scared, what the white man gonna do tomorrow? And even as they are afraid, the Uhuru movement is taking the initiative. We ain't running from no damn body. You understand? They're running, and what we gonna do? Is Hillary gonna help us, etc.? We helping ourselves. And that's setting a kind of example that everybody in the world needs to see. And the truth of the matter is, from this small city in St. Petersburg, Florida, with a tiny African population here, we have been holding the Black Revolution of the 1960s up for more than 50 years. That 50 years ago, that mural came down. Before the mural came down, there were all kinds of actions done by the Uhuru movement here. And even as leaders were being assassinated and organizations were being destroyed, ours stayed on the ground here. And we've been able to keep the whole revolutionary movement of Black people around this country and in some instances around the world alive from right here. This has been the sort of international headquarters of the African Revolution for all of this time, for more than 50 years. And that, you know, obviously places a great responsibility on us to maintain this. And that sign was one. And so we came from Washington, D.C., where we had this incredible Black People's Convention that we played a major role in making it happen in Washington, D.C. From St. Petersburg, here we are in Washington, D.C., with a Black People's Convention for Self-Determination. We came from there, and while we were there, you know, we had all these mothers whose children had been murdered by police throughout this country. And now what we're hearing is these Africans are fighting for this case for Tyrone Lewis. 20 years, they still fighting. And that's who I want to be connected with. I want to be connected with them. I know they will stand by me after the police murdered my child, my husband, etc. So I think that's important. The question of self-determination is a critical question. And the other thing I just wanted to mention is this. As this struggle is unfolding, one of the really interesting things and dilemmas for the government is that they don't know what the hell is happening in this community. That unlike a recent past, when they could rely on these sellouts, these petty bourgeois middle class sellouts to come and tell them what's going on, boss, this is what they're planning now, or who they could rely on for any kind of advice. They can't rely on these Negroes anymore. Not now. The whole African community is shut down to them. And the Gwen Reeses, I'm talking about that Negro who works for the YWCA and who is heading up this effort to replace the mural. She can't tell them anything, or she doesn't know what the hell. They are disconnected from the African community. Their roots aren't disconnected. I mean, he sends what do you call it, a resolution. He's got somebody who reads the obituary column, and so that every time an African dies, his office will send a resolution to the funeral. That's his participation in this community. He's downtown. He's hanging with the same people Gwendolyn Reese hangs with. They are disconnected from the African community. We are the only ones with the connection to the African community. So this is a mystery for them. They can't tell what the hell is happening. They can't rely on them to say how they're going to do this. And even the preachers, they are contained within that little circle of their congregation. So they don't have a meaningful connection. And the most dynamic sector out here is the Uhuru movement. And that's why we have to work extremely hard to bring more and more Africans into this process from our community. That's why we have to be so excited by the enthusiasm that ordinary African people have demonstrated when they see this sign. That happened 20 years ago. Why you got all these people honking their horns and throwing up their fists when they see us putting the sign up? 20 years ago that happened. Because somebody is speaking to them, and they know that. They know Tyrone Lewis was one of us, one of them. And so that's the authority of our movement. And I'm sure this authority is reverberating throughout the downtown. This is why Christman given an opportunity. The mayor don't want to mess with this. If he don't have to, he don't want to mess with it. But the police they're pushing Christman to take a stance and let them push that side. We pushing back on this side. And the police themselves are wary of how to deal with the Uhurus. They call us bullies. That's the police calling somebody a damn bully, because they used to Africans have running from them and backing up from them and not being able to take a stance, etc. But they know differently about the Uhuru movement. And so that's really important. We set an extraordinarily important example for our people, for our community, at a time where people are terrified and running because of the election of Donald Trump. There is this ray of light that is right here in this building, in this movement, in this city, that will raise the morale high for Africans, not only here, but throughout the world. People are watching this struggle on Facebook as it's being live streamed throughout the world. We saw the tweet from Dead Press, one of the Dead Press person who's going to be in town tonight, saying that glad to get back to Uhuru, what do they call it? Uhuru Town, and said that as a comment to the struggle of revolving around this sign that we're engaged in dealing with. So people everywhere are watching this and they're very excited about what we're doing here. So I just wanted to say that. And I want to say that people who are not in a part of the Uhuru movement, you have an obligation to join it because you have to help build and make this connection with our community. You have an obligation because your enemies are organized. All of our enemies are organized. And the thing that frightens them more than anything else is that they see organization. When they see the Uhuru movement, they see African people moving in an organized fashion. Somebody said that when we decided that we were going to put the sign back up after it was taken down, and we went up and we set up the podium and set up everything, and somebody said, wow, you did this like that so quickly. How the hell you make that happen? Because we are organized. That's how we made it happen. And that's the critical thing that we have to achieve, organization. And everybody here has the responsibility to come into organization. We will win. We are winning. Uhuru.
Uhuru, want to appreciate the chairman for that interjection, and also.
May I just say one other thing?
Yes, you can.
Yeah. The only other thing I want to mention is this. We show the example of the other memorials. That's why the attack on us is an attack on free speech. They talk about legalism and stuff like that, but obviously it's not legality. We know it's not legality because the other ones, they don't mess with them at all. We're not asking to take other people's down. We want everybody who put up their memorials to let them stay there. We don't call on the state to take it down. If we call on the state to take anything down, it's the one that they approved. With those pigs, that's the one that we might ask them to take down. But we cannot fall into the thing of saying that since they're taking ours down, then you ought to take everybody's down. I say, hell no. The struggle for democracy is to place severe limitations on the ability of the state to intervene at all. We don't want to validate the state anytime at all. So we're not saying take theirs down. We're saying don't mess with that damn sign. That's what we're saying. We're saying that's free speech. Other people are exercising free speech, and we want everybody to be able to exercise free speech. Uhuru.
Uhuru. So to join this organization again, for all of you guys in here, that InPDUM table right there has membership forms. Everything's ready to go for you to sign up today. And for people who are watching online who have not joined but really want to join now, you can go to inpdum.org. That's InPDUM.org. And go ahead and join. Uhuru. Oh, okay. Uhuru. All right. So on your program, I flubbed up the numbers a little bit for calling the mayor. The number is 893, not 983. I apologize. Uhuru. But also the flyers are located on the table, so you can catch those flyers to calling the mayor. Uhuru. Uhuru. Okay. Tanya, now come back up. And I hope everybody's feeling real generous. Start sledding at your wallets. And we're going to pass around our basket. We are making a call for resources from the community because all the work that we do, that street sign was put up, by the African community. Everything that we do is funded by the poor and working class African community because that's the work that we do. And we understand that nobody is going to be our liberators but us, and that the economic and the political are one, and whoever you are funded by, it says a lot about your political direction. And because we are funded by the poor and working class African community, our direction, our political direction is for the poor and working class African community. So we're gonna go ahead and pass the basket around. We're gonna try to raise $100 today. So we can do it. People online, if you wanna donate, you can go to InPDUM.org again. Right after you join, go ahead and click that donate button and donate to this organization. Again, everything that we do, all of the work, it comes out and you can see everything that we do is for the community. So again, we're trying to raise $100 tonight. So go ahead, open your wallets, be generous. It's holiday season, y'all. Uhuru. All right, so I wanted to open it up for any discussion or questions. Did anybody have, anything to say? I know the chairman just really, Uhuru, yes. Can you come to the mic and, say, oh, well, we have a live stream, so we want people online to hear you. Right here. Yeah.
Thank you. My name is Dontrell Smith. I'm a Black African American, and I've been here for 30-some years. I was a certified nursing assistant. I tried to do the right thing, not get in trouble like my parents said, and I have always ran in problems with the cops. You know what I'm saying? I've been pushed by the cops. My mom suffered from mental illness. I took care of her mainly all my life, and it was times that she needed to go to the hospital for, mental illness or whatever, and cops have put their feet in her stomach and all kinds of stuff like that. You know what I'm saying? So I'm sick of it. I'm tired of it. I'm tired of our young Black men being killed. You understand what I'm saying? I understand what you're doing about the sign. The sign is very important. But my thing is, I think more needs to be done far as fighting. I mean, we need to protect our young people, our mothers, our fathers. That is so important. I love the legacy of Martin Luther King. I love the legacy of Malcolm X or whatever. You know what I'm saying? So I don't want to say too much up here, but I think I love this. I'm coming from Manatee County, and I've always wanted to be a part of a movement, and this is wonderful. This is wonderful. It's just excellent. I just have one other thing to say. We don't own any buildings downtown. I don't know anybody that does. It's a new business owner. I'm doing barbecue for the new club called The Porch, and he's going through some problems with white America because he has a couple nice cars and everything. I really want to say some things about America. I want to say, but we have children. We have children here. So, I just love everything that everybody is doing, and we need to get stronger and keep that Tyrone Lewis sign up. Thank you so much.
Uhuru. Yes, Uhuru. I really want to appreciate you, brother, for coming up to this Sunday rally. And, those are the colonial contradictions that we face every day. Those are the contradictions that colonialism has created for us. Colonialism is the foreign and hostile domination of, people's lands, resources, and that was Europe when they came over and they colonized America, committed genocide against the indigenous people, stole African people, and carved up Africa for Europeans and for America, stealing the resources from Africa, and then using African people as commodities, the first form of capital in this country. And that's why everything exists as it does today. And again, as it was stated earlier, that's why the police are so necessary. And the police function our communities the way they do. They treat African people the way they do because they have to maintain this parasitic relationship with us. And, you know, the best thing you can do to fight for African people, to fight for your brother, your sister, your mama, your aunt, whoever, is to join a revolutionary organization. It's to join InPDUM. That's the best way you can defend your people. You have to get organized. Like the chairman said, you know, your enemy is organized, and they get scared as hell when they see the poor and working class African people getting organized and rising up against them. But that's the best way to defend African people. So I really want to appreciate you, Brother Uhuru.
I just want to add to that. The thing that makes it difficult for us to organize for ourselves is we've accepted the identification imposed on us by our oppressor. You can't be an African and American at the same time. It's just absolutely impossible. You're either an African or you're American. You can't get on a boat in Africa as an African and then get off here as a Negro or some kind of Afro-American. And I think that's a critical thing in terms of even moving forward, because once they can give you their name, then you lose access to your own identity. And that's a real problem that many Africans face. That's why we find ourselves fighting against what they call racism, which is really a struggle to make America better. But when America is better, it just means it's more effective in exploiting black people and other people around the world. I'm not trying to perfect America. I'm trying to win freedom from America. And that our problem is that somebody came to Africa and kidnapped us and brought us here against our will. And since that time have been extracting all kinds of value from our lives and committing all kinds of crimes. You say your mother suffers from mental illness. I don't know how many Africans do not suffer from mental illness. When somebody can capture you and force us to live in these circumstances, you don't even have your own damn name anymore. You're talking about people suffering from schizophrenia. What is more schizophrenic than to call yourself an African and American at the same time? You're an African and American. That's crazy. You're not an African and American. That's insanity is what's imposed on us. And when we accept the reality that white power puts on us, that then becomes a form of insanity. And that drives African people crazy. And, you know, we see this throughout our communities, in our families, everywhere, this madness that we have imposed on us. And you know why so many African people have mental breakdowns? Because they can't do what you can't talk about. If people could do what you can't talk about, then there would be a lot less mental breakdowns in the community. If people could go ahead and take exact revenge on people who are insulting us, messing on, keeping us living in the worst kind of poverty. If you could, when the police put his foot in your mama's stomach, if you could do what needs to be done, you'd be less stressed. I'm telling you that. Blood pressure, high blood pressure, all this stuff comes as a consequence of living as a slave under colonial domination. And then instead of trying to get away from it, trying to fight it, trying to overturn it, we try to integrate with it. That's the craziest thing in the world, which is what an African American, the concept of African America, the concept of fighting against racism is an attempt to integrate with the very same oppression that's killing us on a daily basis. And that creates tremendous confusion in the African community. But most of us in the Uhuru movement are not confused, at least not about that. And, you know, you should think about taking the Uhuru movement to Manatee County. We'll help you. Uhuru.
Uhuru, was there any more questions, comments anybody wanted to make? No? You sure? Nothing? None of the babies want to say why they want to defend the sign? No? Yes, come here. We're going to say something. Come on. Come on, say something. Come on. Yes.
All right. All right.
Okay. All right, come out. Come out in front, ladies.
Okay.
Why do we need TyRon in the back?
What?
The black community in the back.
The black community.
How about Uhuru?
Uhuru.
Black power. Black power. Want to say Uhuru?
Uhuru.
Uhuru, black power. That's it? Okay. Thank you, guys. Thank you. Thank you, ladies. Uhuru. Anybody else? No? Did we get anything online? Oh, God, no, I'm holding the mic. Oh, Uhuru. All right, Jackson, Uhuru. San Diego. Any questions from online or anything? No? All right. Okay, well, okay, that's it. Then I'm going to go ahead and open it up. We have a couple of announcements. So I'm going to bring up first Chimarenga Slamau, Uhuru.
Uhuru. So I know everybody's pumped up about Tyrone Lewis Street Side Memorial. So in line with that, the Black is Back Coalition was formed in 2009. And every year we've been doing demonstrations in Washington, D.C. It's a coalition made of different African organizations all over the U.S. And one of the things that's being called for by the Black is Back is a demonstration at a park in Washington, D.C. on January 14th. And the significance of that is that this demonstration will be a week before the presidential inauguration. So we don't want to go on the day of the inauguration because everybody's going to be there on the inauguration day. We want to go the week before. So we want to bring buses from everywhere to come into Washington, D.C. on January 14th. And from right here, we want to do the same thing. We want to get 50 people on a bus, take a bus out of St. Pete. We'll arrive in Washington, D.C. about 8 o'clock in the morning on the 14th. And then after a few hours of doing the rally, we'll turn back around and then go back to St. Pete. So we'll be back on the 15th, Sunday the 15th. So we want to get people on board, but it's going to cost a little bit of money, $105 per person. And we're going to give you a chance to make some payments to do that. If you got $5 a day to give me that, show your intention to make this trip, I need to get people signed up for this trip. So let me see the hands of the people who are interested in making this bus trip to Washington, D.C. to talk about self-determination for Black people and the self-determination agenda. Okay, I see 5 hands. I'm going to be right over there at that table, have the sign-up sheet. Did everybody get this sheet with the particulars on it? Okay, I'll make sure you get that. And I want you to raise your hand. And the people who raise their hand, I want you to come right over there to this table.
Uhuru, I want to pay for this bus in 2 weeks. So that's what we're asking for. It's going to cost $105. And we'd like to have that bus paid for in 2 weeks. We need to go ahead and have people start paying so that we can put the deposit down on the bus. We need to put the deposit down on the bus and when we sign the contract. To get the deposit on the bus, we need to have $900. That means we need to have a minimum of 9 people who will have paid. And then, what is it, how many days before? 30 days before, we'll have to have paid everything else. So we're in a real scramble. And we need to see, again, people who are willing to go and to initiate a process of paying the $105. I may take the bus, but I have to get to DC early because I'm going to be playing a role in getting people organized in DC, and I may have to get to New Jersey to try and get people organized there. But for those who are going to go, who intend to make this trip, I believe we can raise $50 a week for the next 2 weeks. And I would like, again, for people to sign up and begin this process, because we're going to hound you for the $105 so that we can, get people there to DC. It would be great if we can leave here in a 50-passenger bus. Take a minimum of 50 Africans with us, 50 people with us on this bus. So can we see the hands of the people again who intend to go? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I see more than 5, Chimaringa. Oh, I thought you did. Okay, I see 9 hands. If we count the children, I see 9 hands, at least 9 hands. So 10 hands. That's a grand right there. So please sign up with Chimaringa. And we're going to take this thing very seriously. If you have to, you can initiate a payment plan with Chimaringa so that we can, if you pay it, come by tomorrow. If you don't have anything today, come by, next week. But the thing is, we really want to make this thing happen. And we want you to get other people who you know to sign up also. Let's make this trip to DC. A lot of people, like we say, are afraid, are scared as hell because Trump got elected. Well, we're going to Washington, D.C. January 14th is not just an empty date. As it was mentioned, it's a week before the inauguration of Donald Trump. And the other thing is, it's the day before the birth of the anniversary of Martin Luther King. So it's up to us to say whether the birth of Martin Luther King is going to be celebrated by the inauguration of Donald Trump, or whether it's going to be celebrated with the movement of resistance, a renewed, reinvigorated new movement of Black resistance. So, we're looking for everybody to take this trip with us. Uhuru. Get on the bus, y'all. Get on the bus.
Uhuru, okay, so I'm going to bring up Shango. He has an announcement for us, and then I'll have 2 announcements following.
Oh, as she said, my name is Shango, and I know Thanksgiving is in 3 to 4 days. So you know what that means, y'all gonna be eating. So I want y'all to come to the gym. We have a plan planned out for everybody individually. We'll get you a meal plan, personalized workout. So when you do eat all that food, you won't be that far off track. When you get done eating, come back to the gym and get back on track. So come to the gym. It's on Melrose and 9th. And if you're online on Facebook, you want a workout plan, Facebook, Tyrone Lewis Gym, you see the gym symbol, message it, and you'll be talking to me, and I'll give you everything that you need to get right, pretty much. So, uhuru.
Uhuru. So a week before we get on the bus to DC, we will be having the African People's Socialist Party plenary. It's going to be from Saturday to Monday, January 7th through 9th. And it's going to be here at Aquaba Hall starting at 9 a.m. And we're going to be putting the revolution back on the agenda. We're going to have African people from all around the world in this room. We're asking for everybody to participate and, just see the way forward. And it's a planning conference of the African nation. And we just, talk about strategy and, again, putting revolution back on the agenda for African people, because revolution is the only solution. So, again, January 7th through 9th, flyers are over there on that table. Make sure you are here on those days. And, again, that's a week before we leave for D.C. Tim, you sitting in the corner like, you good? Oh, okay. All right. Sorry. Uhuru. Okay. Okay. Uhuru. All right. And also, if you are interested in volunteering, then the Uhuru movement has the new to you, into you, Uhuru Volunteer Brigade, where all of our institutions are opening up to volunteers. So if you're a student, and I know here in Florida, you need Bright Futures hours to graduate high school, you need community service hours, anything like that. We have things like the Black Power 96.3 radio station that needs help. Uhuru Foods and Pies needs volunteers. We're in season right now for Uhuru Foods and Pies, and we have expanded our venues for the pies. So we always need help baking and everything. So Uhuru Foods and Pies The Burning Spear newspaper, the oldest revolutionary paper in existence. We know we need writers, we need editors, we need proofreaders, we need all of those things. So come. Oh yes, and we need people to go out in these streets and sell the Burning Spear. So if you want to volunteer with the Burning Spear, volunteering at Tyrone Lewis Community Gym, Uhuru Tours, and also for the Uhuru Solidarity Movement. So if you're interested in volunteer hours, and you just want to learn more about each program that we have in the Uhuru movement, we have the volunteer meetings here every other Wednesday at 6:30, and the next meeting date is going to be December 7th. So make sure you guys are here December 7th at 6:30 p.m. to see how you can volunteer with Uhuru. Uhuru. All right, so that's all I have for announcements. Did anybody else have anything before I move forward? No? Okay, I'm sorry? Oh, okay, never mind. All right, so, well, that concludes our program. I just want to thank everybody for coming out today. I want to thank the chairman for, Nico, did you have any? Okay, wait, we got a little RBG who want to say something. We're going to say it. All right, here we go. You going to say it this time? Okay.
We have to fight back for ourselves.
Girl, right. That's right. Okay, she ain't never lie. Uhuru. All right, so again, I want to appreciate everybody for coming out to our weekly Sunday rally meetings. Appreciate all the little RBG babies here today. And also to defend the sign, we do have a sign-up sheet right over on that table. And that means, you know, when it's necessary, called upon, you want to do surveillance and things like that, put your name right there, sign up, put your phone number so we can contact you to defend the sign. Again, that's going to be right over there. Appreciate all of our online viewers who are always tuning in with us every Sunday. Appreciate the chairman for speaking and interjecting, and for our discussion, brother from all the way from Manatee County. We want to appreciate everybody, and also our Karamu staff who has provided a delicious chili dinner for all of us, vegan by the way. All right, Uhuru. So thank you guys, Uhuru.